Hi guys, welcome to my prep video, getting right into it. I'd like to start with the clean kitchen, clear off some of the counters here. Some of the things I use include a pestle and mortar. Hopefully you have one that is safer and not broken. I should really get on to getting a new one for me. I use a couple different cutting boards. The main point is I like to have some that are permanently designated for raw meat and other things that I use to cut up fresh fruits and veggies. I use just one nice chef knife to cut up everything else. I don't need to use anything fancy. I use one big pot to boil things like leafy greens, which you may or may not need to use for your recipe. And finally, I have a big strainer, and this is to strain things like the spinach or celery in the recipe. I use a big bowl to mix things up. Sometimes I use a Ninja blender and an Instapot. Optionally, you could add some wine, maybe a mimosa if you're working in the morning. I put on a good show like Chris Masterjohn, and I also hire professional taste testers to make sure that I'm actually on the right track for my recipe. I also like to get help from people who are definitely eager to make dog food, especially on Sunday mornings. I like to start by cooking the plant ingredients because the plant ingredients are going to be the things that take the longest, and we can do other things while they are cooking. So I put my sweet potatoes in and I cook it for, I think I cooked it for 15 minutes. Yep. So, and then I had natural release for, I think, 10 or so minutes after that. Now I'm going to boil my leafy greens, in this case, the spinach, but it might be different for your recipes. Now I'm going to portion out the raw plant ingredients that don't need to be cooked, such as blueberries or apples. If you have apples in your recipe, you'll want to add a little bit more weight than what the recipe calls for because you're going to lose some of that when you remove the seeds and the stems. Um, and I wish I had a certain percentage for you, but I can't name it off the top of my head. It's going to depend on how well you're good at getting rid of the core. So you can grate this. I actually like to throw it in my blender and just blend it up into smaller chunks. Meanwhile, my spinach has cooked and it is now cooling in the strainer. So now I'm going to make my mineral mix. If you're a client, these are the red ingredients on your recipe ingredient list. So I'm going to weigh out my powders, and then I'm also going to count out my tablets that are going to be crushed into a fine powder. Please, please remember that the red ingredients are given in the batch amounts. These are not daily feeding amounts, so that's super important. So basically, I'm going to crush them up very well, and I'm going to add it to a larger bowl with my weighed out powder, which you may or may not need to use. The main point of this is I want to have a really evenly mixed supplement mixture. So the final thing I'm going to add are any capsules that need to be opened, and I kind of spread them out across the top. And then I will mix this together, being careful not to lift any of the powder up. So please don't inhale any of this, especially some of those calcium supplements can really go airborne. So be careful. And I'm going to add this to a larger ingredient in just a second. So now I'm going to portion out my meat, my organs, all of that. And I'm going to cut it up while my sweet potato is cooking or it's cooling. I cut things up kind of weird. I kind of cut them up like I'm dicing an onion because I'm having a really busy month. I'm going back to school, so I really just want all my ingredients to be mixed together in a bowl and I don't have to think about it. If you like larger chunks, you just take the total amount for that ingredient and divide it by the total days for the batch. So if you have 1 pound of meat for 7 days, you divide 1 by 7, and that's how much meat should go in each daily container. After I'm done cutting up, whether it's the liver, the chicken, kidneys, whatever, each ingredient gets thrown into a larger bowl and I mix it up each time I add something new. So my sweet potatoes have cooled, I've added my blueberries, and now I'm going to add my mineral mix. And I want to make sure that I'm patient with this and I mix this up very evenly because the sweet potato is going to act as a carrier for all of these minerals so that the dog is getting a pretty even amount every single day. So once this is mixed up, I'm going to slowly add it to my larger bowl that has my liver, my chicken, and you can see here we have a nice evenly mixed bowl with all of the plant ingredients, the sweet potatoes in there with the supplements, and it's ready to be portioned out and then stored in the freezer. So I clear off a big space. If you don't have a space like this, you might consider purchasing maybe a card table that can be folded up and stored away. And then I bring my bowl over, and I like to just scoop things out, doing a scoop at a time in each container. If you like to be very, very specific, you can weigh that giant bowl or bucket and divide that by the total amount of days for the batch. So if it's 1 pound for 7 days, just making up numbers, you would do 1 divided by 7, and that's how much each container should weigh approximately. So each time you do the batch, your final weight is going to vary just because of differences in moisture. So that's why I don't give you a daily feeding amount. So now I'm going to freeze most of the ingredients, hire my cleaning crew to help me start on the dishes, and I'm only going to keep a couple days thawed at a time, and so nothing goes bad in the fridge. Now, for clients, your green ingredients are given in daily amounts that are added fresh every day. So for me, I'm adding a little bit of milk, egg, the raw meaty bone, vitamin E, and a little bit of fish oil. And those are added every day fresh because they should not be mixed into the batch. So if you see green ingredients, if you're a client, just know that those are not meant to be mixed into the batch. So that's basically my process when I prep food. I know that my end product isn't exactly Instagram worthy, but for me, especially with school starting, this works a lot, and it helps me make a really streamlined process for a lot of my clients. A couple more tips here that I didn't touch on. If you are not super good with a knife, you can always choose to blend your ingredients like the liver or the kidney. A lot of these meats are very soft that they work quite well in just my regular blender that I have at home. I don't have a grinder to grind bones up or anything like that, but obviously that would be another option. If you like to cut up the bigger chunks, it helps to have a lot of the ingredients more on the frozen side, especially the organ meats, especially the liver. The liver can be really slippery cutting it up. So if you want to keep things more on the frozen side, that helps cutting it up. And it also helps if you're a little bit sensitive to the way that some of the organ meats smell, especially the heart and the liver, or the heart and the kidney. I hear that a lot. Yeah, keeping it a little bit frozen will help with that. If this is all too much to do at one time, you might consider pre-portioning things out or weighing things out the day before, maybe making your mineral mix the day before. So that way you're not super overwhelmed on prep day, though, a lot of this comes down to just having your own process, getting comfortable in your kitchen. And, the first prep might take a long time, but really it gets better. So stick with it. And of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me at savannah@feedthydog.com.